Some of the most renowned video games of all time have a concept that sound very exciting from the get-go. A cybernetically enhanced super soldier on a mission to thwart alien armies, a lone warrior to be with a destiny to take down an evil king hell-bent on conquering the world. But how about a taxi driver? Playing through a few of my favorites lately made me realize how understated some of their concepts are. It almost makes me wonder how these got funded to begin with. When they weren't completely independent, how did their publishers have confidence in these kinds of projects? The game that got me to really start thinking about this was Crazy Taxi, which, for all intents and purposes, can be boiled down to a taxi driving simulator. That concept alone was enough for Sega back then, apparently. But somehow they were convinced it'll make a good game, and now it stands as a legendary arcade classic. It has that fast-paced, twitchy gameplay that Sega's arcade titles are known for, and it pretty much remains as the only relevant game entry depicting the life of taxi drivers. Thankfully, that really dumb-looking game that was shaping up to be a Dead to Rights clone based off the Scorsese film never came to be. I really like the design of Crazy Taxi. Despite the rambunctious nature, glazed with the rowdy-looking characters, and punkish soundtrack, this was more about expertly getting your customers to their destination as cleanly as possible, while you're encouraged and rewarded to make daring stunts like ramp jumps and driving on the opposite side of the road full of traffic. You get scolded and miss out on combos when you crash into something or make contact with another vehicle. That was always a neat little balance for me. While you are rewarded extra time for getting the customer to their destination quickly, you score much higher points for getting there without a scratch while pulling off audacious stunts that don't endanger the lives of others. You'd think the objective would be to tear through everything as explosively as possible, kind of like Smashing Drive, the only other game I can think of where you're a taxi driver that isn't related to Crazy Taxi. That game is full of power-ups and destruction, yet it fell into complete obscurity while Crazy Taxi is lauded as the absolute classic. The job opportunity of a taxi driver is not a very exciting one. But how about a tycoon for a multi-billion-dollar company? Does that sound enticing? Because that's what you are in Crazy Taxi Tycoon, a game that very bizarrely goes against literally everything that made the original Crazy Taxi. You're not a cab driver, I guess you're a manager in this game. You just tap icons and the cabs automatically go get the customers, and said cabs are rewarded for causing property damage. There's no timer of any sort, and basically it just comes down to playing whack-a-mole with a touchscreen and watching a bunch of ads. Despite the life of a tycoon being something a lot of people would probably jump at the chance to try in real life, being a lowly taxi driver is actually a lot more fun and rewarding. At least in the world of Crazy Taxi. In the end, all I'm saying is that at the surface, the concept of Crazy Taxi is not that exciting, but the experience itself is so awesome and gratifying, it just goes to show how you can't judge games so quickly. What other playable scenarios sound exciting to people? What if you were a random nobody in California? That doesn't sound like much, until that nobody gets a real working copyright-free lightsaber and a chance to cut down the world's most dangerous assassins. A guy with a recently passed away wife, who is led into a town full of terrifying creatures with a mystery about his wife's death alluding to him. Now we're talking. See, these are concepts that have a little spice thrown in there that make them really interesting. How about if you were Batman? I'm already in. Okay, how about if you're an attorney? That's it, just a defense attorney in a mostly plain world. Obviously, I'm talking about Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. Despite how the core concept is just playing as a lawyer, the developers made it exceedingly more interesting by having you take the liberty to figure out his client's cases practically on his own. Top that off with diverse, colorful characters and an enthralling soundtrack. The Ace Attorney franchise has spanned across multiple titles for nearly 20 years. How about Papers, Please? An indie game about working as an immigration inspector on the border point of a European country. That description alone is sleep-inducing. And yet, it sold millions across the world and received immense acclaim throughout its launch, winning so many awards in various publications. I can keep going on about how particular games start with very banal concepts but are revered as instant classics upon release. It seems like the more independent studios have become savants of downplayed ideas that appear boring on the surface. These madmen tend to make games based off of a single image or a random suggestion, no matter how mundane it may seem. Honestly, without getting too lost in the weeds, it comes down to how you design and present the game. These can click with players for so many reasons, while possibly leaving others unamused and clueless as to why they enjoy them so much. The pressure of quickly and efficiently analyzing passports to determine authenticity, learning the many drink combinations and regular customers, catching the contradictions of guilty parties, pulling pranks and fooling NPCs while being a rambunctious fowl, and the absolute chaos you're required to whiz through in busy California town. These games are each endearing and fun in their own ways that make them unique to each other, cementing the idea that the core concept of a game shouldn't be the ultimate judgment of its value. Not everything needs to be set in a zombie apocalypse or some hostile alien planet, right? However, we cannot talk about understated game concepts and leave out 2019's darling. Dare I say, it might be the absolute king of understated concepts. I'm talking about Death Stranding. When more gameplay was being revealed, people became very confused by it. Is this game really just going to be about carrying stuff? The derogatory term walking simulator was being thrown around when describing this upcoming title. It's such a boring concept that many thought the whole thing was simply a ruse and the core gameplay was going to be completely different, something much more exciting. Kojima's been known as a trickster when it comes to marketing after all. Honestly, this game unintentionally duped as many people as possible before release. I know your tricks, Kojima. This is a fake trailer and they're gonna reveal the real project. Silent Hills is back and he never really left the company.
Look like a bitch.
Watch the Lore Roar video. Look at the Easter eggs. PT is still alive and happening.
Look like a bitch again.
Look, if I mess with the Bridges logo for like 2 hours straight on Photoshop, it spells out MGS0. This is a prequel to Metal Gear Solid. Must be intentional. I'm not an insane person at all.
Making him yet another stupid bitch.
Turns out, yeah. Not only was this a wholly original game and Kojima isn't pulling some elaborate trick, carrying stuff around is like 90% of the game, maybe more. And while it didn't capture the hearts of every single prestigious game critic out there, it received plenty of acclaim, and in the end, I actually enjoyed my experience. A lot. But why? Is it the complex story full of ridiculous soft science surrounded by the downfall of human life as we know it? No. The heap load of well-dressed celebrities that make up the entire cast? No. Norman Reedus' acting?
What president? America's gone. You talking about the mayor of Central Knot? No. They're closing in on my position. I have to move before they realize I'm in here.
God, no. Just plain old Kojima fanboyism? Well, personally, no, but I'm sure that amounts to some of its recognition. But that can't be the only thing. I'm not a Kojima fanboy. Hell, this is the first game of his I ever bought brand new, and only because I got it on discount. Even so, I found this game to be very captivating. It wasn't something I felt the first couple hours, and I also didn't like how they handled the story. Some things never change, huh, Kojima? But it scratched a primordial itch I didn't even know I had. Think about what all creatures did, before now, before contemporary times, hell, even before the beginning of civilization. What was nearly every living thing capable of doing? Carrying things. Big or small, it was all about bringing stuff from point A to point B in order to support your life or the life of others since the dawn of time. It didn't matter what it was. There was no building, no structure nor shelter, no form of evolving into a civilization without the ability to carry things. This is true even now. How does a colony of 1 million ants keep itself going? By gathering. Birds collect material for their nests and food in order to provide for the next generation. Beavers building their homes, bears preparing to hibernate. This primitive natural instinct to gather, collect, and provide is still a part of our lives every single day. It's something embedded into everyone's gray matter. So, in Death Stranding, you're a part of this dystopia where the one thing mankind was born with is the essential tool to saving humanity once again. This insane metaphor where all the technological and social progress this country has made over the centuries just led them right back to square fucking one, in which you as a regular human being, who happens to be some kind of anomaly that lets you travel outside, since the dawn of time is the only thing that can save the goddamn world. Or at least North America. They don't really go into any other country. I came into Death Stranding thinking I'd dig the story a lot, even though I was fully aware that Kojima can strike out when it comes to writing material for his games. And perhaps part of me still believed that most of the game would be more action-oriented than we were led to believe, not being aware that he was playing it straight the entire time. Nobody believed the marketing, myself included to a degree, but in the end, the core gameplay was the most compelling part to me. Why, of course I'll carry this all with me. Stack that shit up, hell yeah. This gameplay gives our brain those dopamine hits in a unique and very underhanded way. I really like planning out my routes, stacking packages on top of other packages, and accomplishing these deliveries back to back. I'm also a proud single-trip grocery Chad, so there's no question why this kind of thing satisfies me immensely. I can talk about the cool sci-fi horror elements throughout the campaign and wonderful atmosphere, but you guys have probably heard enough of that by now. Being a simple delivery boy was a surprising amount of fun for me, and I'd imagine that's the same case for others. I just wanted to throw in my theory as to why. I also bet hiking enthusiasts appreciated how annoying it was to travel uphill and in rough terrain. Even though it has plenty of faults, I was glad to see someone in Kojima's position try something that he had to have known wouldn't bode well with people anticipating his next big game after leaving Konami. In a lot of ways, I'm very happy to see he didn't make a plain by the numbers action game. It may have a lot of similarities with other overtly cinematic Sony exclusives that are too occupied with having shiny new graphics instead of providing intense high impact gameplay, but at least it still tries to walk to its own rhythm, and it sure does walk a lot. While many would claim it was as poorly designed as it was up its own ass, I think everything about it was completely intentional and works for the kind of game it's trying to be. For the most part. Death Stranding didn't turn out to be the game I thought I'd go nuts for or even bother running through a second time, but I figured there was something about it that kept me from turning it off. You don't play a game as long as this just to hate it, I would think. The deeply buried instincts in my brain told me to see through this dark hellscape as a guy who just had to deliver goods. And I obliged, despite taking more than 50 hours to complete. Don't look at that. Anyway, if you're reluctant to give any game a serious shot because it sounds boring, then I hope this helps convince you to reconsider with an open mind. Perhaps it too will please a part of your brain you didn't realize you have. Thanks for watching. A shout out to my patrons that continue to support me in these trying times. And a special shout out to Muriel, a new czar of zombos. Hope I said your name right. With your guidance, we shall rain justice upon our foes of YouTube. And if you're interested in supporting my work, check out my Patreon through the link below.